Well, of course, the Ravens pasted the Giants yesterday in New Jersey, getting back in the swing of things out of the bye. Joining us now, this man, of course, was on the call for the game on CBS. He is Mr. Andrew Catalon, and he's with us now here on GCR. Andrew, it's Glenn. Happy holidays to you. Thank you, as always, taking the time for us.
You got it, Glenn. Always good to be with you.
Man, I'm guessing if you and I had talked last week, we would have said something like, yeah, sure, on paper, this doesn't look like it's going to be a game, but the Ravens have had this, really weird problem with teams like this during the course of the season and losing to the Browns and the Raiders. So while there's not a ton of jubilation in Baltimore about beating this New York Giants team, the reality is this is the type of game that has tripped them up before, and it is somewhat of a measurement just to make sure that they got the job done yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you look at the Raiders game, which I actually called that one week 2 in Baltimore, and that was a stunner. And then obviously the Cleveland one, we didn't see that one coming either. So I think that if you're a Ravens fan, you have every right to think in the back of your mind, why, what, is this going to happen again? But the Giants are a really bad football team right now. So I think it was a good sign for the Ravens that it was a workmanlike, professional, let's just take care of business and get on to these next 3 games, which are massive. They obviously had to have that one, and they did. The Giants are just not a good team right now, and the Ravens really had their way right from the start. Even though Lamar fumbled, I think right after that, everything just clicked, and away they went.
Andrew, is there anything that you gathered in the week leading up to the game about where this team was and having your meetings and anything that you got about their focus coming out of their bye?
Yeah, and we mentioned this, a couple of times in the broadcast. Sitting or meeting with Lamar the way that we met with him, you could tell, and he even made comments that everybody saw down there about how he was antsy to get back on the field.
Yeah.
We saw how emotional he was after the loss to Philly. He was ready to go. I mean, he was really, hearing Zay Flowers tell us just how Lamar demands excellence, and John Harbaugh reiterating that as well. This is a guy that I feel, and I've met with Lamar throughout his career, it was the most determined and most focused that I had heard him talk about what lies ahead. Now, obviously, he's always had that in him, but I don't know if he always expresses that. And to me, I felt a difference this time talking with him, and I think that I think Ravens fans are probably going to see that as well in the way that he plays, and he already got off to a great start yesterday.
And, there was a lot made about with his mom cussing him out after the Eagles game. We did see a little bit more running, although I thought it was more designed running yesterday. Do we need to maybe hire Lamar Jackson's mom to be like an offensive consultant for the Baltimore Ravens the rest of the season?
Yeah, John Harbaugh joked, you always got to listen to mom. And we asked him specifically about those comments, and he said, look, I trust Lamar to play the game the right way, whatever he feels fit for that day. And I think that's some of the danger of this Ravens offense for opponents. They could beat you in a lot of different ways. And if Lamar is turning it up, running the football, that is a handful, as we know. If it's Henry going off, if it's the deep passes like we saw yesterday, I'm pretty high on this Ravens team right now. I think they're going to win the division. I think they're a handful going into the playoffs. I'm pretty high on them right now. I've been high on them all year, and it's seeing it firsthand again yesterday kind of reminded me of why I've liked them all year.
Andrew Catalon was on the call yesterday for CBS. He's with us here on GCR. Andrew, if you say that, obviously that means that you expect the Ravens to win this Saturday against the Steelers, because if they don't, the division is shot. It's interesting because I feel the same thing that I think you feel. I think the Ravens are a better team than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Ravens should have won the first game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but there's just been this weird kind of inconsistency about this team that I think leaves a lot of Ravens fans concerned going into this rematch. Obviously, they've had the history against the Steelers in recent years hasn't been very good. Do you have a sense for how it can all come together for the Ravens and how they can avoid all of these kind of slip-ups that we have seen during the course of the season?
Yeah, so I agree. I do feel that they'll win this game this week. Take nothing away from Pittsburgh and the respect I have from them and the season that they've had, and I know the history has not been kind to Baltimore of late. I just feel at home that this Ravens team is just going to come out firing. I just that's the way that I kind of see it right now with them. And my biggest concern with Baltimore, and I think you would probably share in this, these penalties have to get cleaned up.
Man.
I mean, it's just a mess that they've now had 4 games of over 100 yards in penalties, and that does worry me a little bit, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I just feel like this offense is getting to another gear right now. And I thought we mentioned this too in the broadcast. John Harbaugh said they spent a lot of time looking at their offensive tendencies during the bye week, and there's some things that they want to try to get ahead of the curve on in terms of staying one step ahead of what they think the defense will do. And I think those types of things that we probably didn't even see yesterday, but that we could see down the road, I don't know what they are, but I feel like this is you've heard Lamar say he's more comfortable in year 2 of this offense. You've heard him say he's speaking up more. I just feel like that this team is about to hit a different level right now, and that's why I'm pretty confident in them.
Yesterday the penalties, obviously the Matabike one, that's completely avoidable. I know not all penalties are made equal, right? Like sometimes, and you guys referenced how 50-50 some of the calls were, and I don't know. Of all of the days where penalties were part of the story, oddly yesterday isn't the one that I think I worked. Part of it is because, of course, the Ravens won 35-14, so life is good. But I don't know. Yesterday was maybe not as many of them as there were. The types of penalties perhaps not as critical to me as the weeks where we see offsides or false starts, and all of a sudden you're in 1st and 15, 1st and 20, kind of regularly the way they were, say, against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that some of the penalties yesterday were more out of being overly aggressive per se than silly mistakes or pre-snap penalties. We didn't see as many of those, so I would say that's encouraging. But anytime you're over 100 yards in penalties, I mean that has to get cleaned up, especially as you start to see better teams and better competition here down the stretch.
One guy who I think jumped off the page to a lot of people. I mean, 2 guys in the secondary. What Ardarius Washington has brought to this team since he's been inserted. This was, as Andrew, you recognized from having done games earlier this year, this was the worst pass defense in football. Just that move alone has made a significant difference. And then how much did Nate Wiggins jump off the page at you yesterday as a guy who's kind of come into his own, living up to the billing as being a first-round pick?
Yeah, it was really interesting in our, talks this week with our crew leading up to the game. Jason McCourty, former corner, kept bringing up Nate Wiggins, how he wanted to focus on him, how he wanted to talk about him. I could just tell that Jason was really into what Nate is bringing to the team right now, and he was up for the challenge yesterday. I thought he played a really good game. I think it's exciting how he's starting to develop and grow, and I think that he's become, as you said, a big reason why this past defense is, starting to turn a corner, starting to get a little bit better. I feel like they're all kind of figuring out their roles, and it's starting to gel. Now you throw in Michael Pierce back, you throw in Kyle Van Noy up front. That could put a little more pressure on the quarterback to get the ball out a little bit quicker, and I think that could even help the secondary even more going forward.
That's a great point, by the way. Michael Pierce, who I looked at the stat sheet at the end of the day, and I said, how did Michael Pierce only have 1 tackle? It felt like you guys were calling his name on every play. It felt like he was active. But it's just the little things. It's taking on the double team. It's being a disruptive force. Despite the fact that the stats don't back it up, it really did seem like he had a genuine impact on yesterday's game.
Yeah, and I think that position is just that. You don't necessarily see a lot of the stats in the box score, but you're right. We talked about him a lot, and his presence was felt back in the lineup for Baltimore.
Andrew, it seems like in the rest of the country, the MVP discussion, the door's been slammed shut, right? And that seems a little odd with 3 weeks still to play, but I get it. Like Josh Allen, the Bills are having a special season. Josh Allen, we all know, is a special player, and he's never won an MVP before, so it feels like there's also a little bit of a, hey, this has to be the year that we finally give it to him. The strange part being that Lamar Jackson's numbers are largely across the board better than Josh Allen's this season. I'm not trying to bang the drum because I sort of accept that this is the way it works. It's narrative driven, but what do you make of the argument related to NFL MVP at this point?
Yeah, we showed Lamar's stats in our broadcast yesterday through 13 games in each of his 2 MVP seasons and this year, and they're better. I mean, he's having an amazing year. I'm with you in the sense of let's not call it right now. I think that we have to wait till the end of the season. I think that you're right. The narrative is that Josh and maybe even Saquon are ahead of Lamar. Do I agree with that? I'm not one to make a decision when so much can still happen down the stretch. I mean, if Josh Allen gets the Bills the 1 seed, do you feel differently? If the Eagles get the 1 seed and Barkley goes off, do you feel differently? If the Ravens, win the division and Lamar continues to play lights out, I'm with you. I think it's too early to call it is all I would say.
I understand, and I appreciate that. What a thought to let everything play out before crowning someone. And then, I'll present it to you this way. You see all these teams. Who to you is the team to beat in the AFC at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've been high on Baltimore all year, and that includes after the Week 2 game against Vegas. I still thought that was just an anomaly, and the first 2 games just didn't go their way. I would say that I would right now put Buffalo ahead of Baltimore in the AFC. And obviously everyone seems to be counting out Kansas City this year. I don't know if it's Chiefs fatigue or if they just don't see them dominating, the scoreboard necessarily and playing more close games than they're used to, that people have kind of gone down on them. But I was always one of those guys that said, well, until somebody beats New England, you can't pick against them. And, it's hard I agree with the sentiment that the Chiefs don't look as good as they did in the past, but it's still hard to pick against them. But, again, it's going to come down to who gets hot at the right time. And that's what it always is in the playoffs. And I think a hot Baltimore team is definitely capable of winning the AFC.
Oh, this is very Ric Flair to me. This is very to be the man, you got to beat the man type of situation. You can tell me how the Chiefs look human, but, they still seem to have figured out a way to win almost every game that they've played this season. So, yeah. I'm going to default to them until someone proves otherwise in the playoffs, which is a very difficult thing to do. Andrew Catalon, what's next on the schedule for you? Where are you headed this week?
We're still finalizing the schedule.
Oh, my.
Some of these, I think we're going to do.
At least you don't have to fight holiday travel or anything like that.
I know. I think we're going to do the Las Vegas-Jacksonville game.
Okay.
I think that's what our crew has penciled in, but it's not in pen yet because I feel like there still could be some changes to the schedule. So that's what we're looking at right now.
I'm trying to. I don't want to trash anything, and I know you have to do the game. I was just trying to think of a metaphor to go from Lamar Jackson to Desmond Ridder or something like that. What the
yeah.
Yeah. It's not. It's not exactly. Yeah, I understand that. You've got a job to do, and I appreciate that. Dude, always appreciate you, by the way. Thank you for taking the time for us once again. For you and your family, have a wonderful holiday season, and let's talk again real soon, all right?
You got it. Anytime. Thank you.